They never saw me. Not once. Not in 19 years. They stepped around my mop bucket, tossed paper in my direction, and talked like I was drywall. And I let them. I leaned into the invisibility. Because being invisible is the best way to hear everything they never want heard. My name is Ernest Malloy. I'm 66 years old. And until last week, I was just the night janitor at Parker and Wynn LLP, one of the slickest law firms in downtown Boston. The kind with glass walls, rooftop parties, and clients that move money faster than God. But that's not how the story starts. It starts with my son's name, spoken casually in the break room, like it didn't belong to a dead man. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and write in the comments where you're watching from. It was a Thursday night. The office was mostly empty except for a few stragglers, junior associates burning the midnight oil, and the occasional paralegal microwaving leftover tie. I was pushing my mop through the executive hallway, the floor shining like a mirror, when I heard it. Two voices. Laughing. The kind of laughter that happens when people think they've gotten away with something. Well, yeah, but Carter Malloy wasn't exactly clean. That's the point, one of them said. My hands locked around the mop handle. Carter Malloy, my son, dead 2 years. Overdose, they said. Fentanyl-laced accident, case closed. But I never bought it. Not Carter. He hated pills. Wouldn't even take ibuprofen unless he had a fever. The second voice answered lower. Doesn't matter. He was a liability. He saw things. They had to clean it up. Then laughter again. And just like that, the floor beneath me vanished. I didn't move. Didn't breathe. Waited until their voices faded. Then I stepped into the break room once they'd gone. Empty. Just the buzzing fridge and the lingering stink of pad thai. But the damage was done. The words were burned into my ears. They had to clean it up. That was no accident. No random overdose. That was murder dressed up as a statistic. And the worst part? They knew. These suits. These smiling snakes I'd scrubbed toilets for. Someone in that office had a hand in my son's death, and they were still collecting paychecks like nothing happened. Back at the janitor's closet, I sat on the upturned milk crate in the dark. Heart pounding. I pulled Carter's old photo from my wallet. He was 24 in that picture. Brown curls, tired eyes, crooked smile. He used to say I was the only person who ever listened to him all the way through. I'd failed him. I'd buried him under bad questions and worse answers. And now I knew the truth was somewhere in that building behind one of those polished doors, buried in the folders I wasn't supposed to touch. But I had keys. I had codes. I had access. And I had something none of them did, nothing to lose. The next day, I returned early. I pretended like nothing had changed. They greeted me with nods, barely looking up from their phones. Hey, Ernie, one said. Morning, boss, another joked. If only they knew. I worked silently that evening, stuck to the usual floors, played dumb, smiled when I had to, but when the lights went down and the last paralegal left the 18th floor, that's when I made my move. I used the master key to access conference room C, the one with the executive mail slots. Every folder, every unshredded draft, every loose sticky note. I scanned everything. I wasn't looking for a smoking gun, I was looking for a crack. And I found it. Client red line. Settlement memo. Carter M. reviewed. It was scribbled in pencil on the corner of a post-it. Client red line. That was the construction firm Carter worked for just before he died. And the word settlement meant someone paid money to bury something. I took a photo of the note with my flip phone. Lorez, grainy but real. It was the first breadcrumb. I left everything as I found it. Folder in the same slot. Light off. Door locked. Then I cleaned the floor until it shined. Because that's what they expected from me. A man with a mop. A ghost in overalls. What they didn't expect was what came next. Because I wasn't going to call the police. I wasn't going to plead for justice. I was going to do what they feared most. Make them visible. One by one. The next few nights, I played it slow. I still emptied their bins. Still scrubbed their marble sinks and polished their gold-plated nameplates like nothing had changed. But everything had changed. Because now every stapler, every printout, every whisper behind closed doors, it all meant something. Every detail was a potential threat, and I was going to pull until the whole damn thing unraveled. They just didn't know yet. Saturday night, 11:08 p.m. Most of the floors were dark except the 14th. The litigation team had a trial coming up, and they'd been pulling long hours prepping, which meant the printers were hot. And when printers are hot, they jam. When that happens, who do they call? Ernie, came the whiny voice through the stairwell. I climbed up with my cart like always, opened the tray, and cleared the paper. Simple. But when a junior associate left the room to take a phone call, I accidentally knocked the top folder off the desk. Papers everywhere. Took me 12 seconds to spot the one I needed. Internal memo, red line development litigation risk. Risk. That's corporate talk for liability. And liability means someone's hiding something. I took a mental snapshot. No time for photos. Just read. Fast. Concerns regarding Carter Malloy's worksite report, unreleased materials, advised deletion of draft emails, and termination of retention policy. I nearly dropped it. Termination of retention policy. They were ordering someone to delete the evidence. Probably had already done it. But someone somewhere had seen it. And I was going to find out who. The next day, I went where no janitor's supposed to go. The records room. Basement level. Card access only. But guess who has a backup badge in the supply vault? Took me 3 tries to get the door open. My hands were sweating so bad I nearly dropped the key card. Inside, rows and rows of locked drawers, file cabinets, and cold fluorescent light humming like a mosquito. I scanned for redline. Found a drawer labeled Client Archivar T. Inside, buried under tax files and old contractor agreements, I found the name again. Carter Malloy, internal safety report, and signed, and next to it, a single-page summary marked confidential. I didn't take it. I read it. Memorized what I could. Then, for the first time since this whole thing began, I smiled. Because Carter had filed a report about faulty concrete mixtures, about falsified safety metrics, and he'd sent it. But they never let it reach the state board. Instead, someone at Parker and Wynn had flagged it, pulled it, and shredded it. And 2 weeks later, my son was dead. Back in the closet, I sat in the dark again. This time, I wasn't shaking. I was planning, because now I knew 3 things. 1, Carter's death was no accident. 2, the firm buried a safety report that could have cost their client millions. 3, someone ordered that cover-up. Someone high up. Maybe it was senior partner Wynn himself. Or maybe it was that smug, plastic smile bastard Cliff Rowe, who once told me, janitors know more than they should. That bastard didn't know the half of it. Sunday morning, I opened Carter's old laptop. Still had his sticky note password taped underneath. He'd always been too trusting that way. I logged in. Most of the emails were gone. Clean sweep. But there was one folder buried under a nested directory, a folder within a folder within another, titled simply, Save _ this. Inside were 6 blurry photos. Concrete blocks. Rebar. Cracks. A worksite board listing inspection dates. One photo had a timestamp just 4 days before Carter died. The last one was a selfie. Him. Frowning. Hard hat on. Holding up a clipboard. Caption, if anything happens to me, look here. I stared at that photo for a long, long time. I didn't cry. I haven't cried since we buried Evelyn. But something burned in my chest like a lit match pressed to dry skin. They killed him. And smiled at me for 2 years while I took out their trash. I copied everything to a thumb drive. And that night, I started my list. Names. Faces. Titles. Weak spots. I wasn't just going after the one who gave the order. I was going to burn down every last person who helped hide the truth. And I was going to do it with the same tools I've always used. Patience. Access. And silence. Because the man they ignored? He's not quiet anymore. I started calling it the list. Not on paper, not typed. No trail. Just a growing mental catalog of everyone who laughed too easily, signed too quickly, turned their heads when Carter's name came up. By Wednesday, the list had 6 names. By Friday, it had 10. And at the very top, bold, underlined in my mind like a dagger to the chest, was Cliff Rowe, senior partner. Clean suits, white teeth, and a handshake that squeezed too hard. He ran the red line case, spoke at Carter's memorial, told me he was a bright young man. The world's lesser without him. Liar. Cliff had a pattern. He stayed late every Thursday, locked in his glass office on the 22nd floor. His blinds were always drawn, his trash always full of shredded notes and takeout containers. He thought that made him careful. He didn't know the cleaning schedule changed last month. I was assigned to the 22nd floor. At 8:43 p.m., I entered his office like I always did, quiet, unnoticed. He just stepped out to the restroom. In those 4 minutes, I scanned everything. On his desk, 2 phones. One company issued, one personal. Next to them, a manila folder marked archived, red line. I opened it with gloved hands. Inside, meeting notes, annotations, a post-it stuck to one corner. CM flagged batch 41A again. He's going to cost us. On the last page, in Cliff's handwriting, get him reassigned. Quietly. Before it escalates. Before it escalates. Before Carter went to OSHA. Or to the press. Or to me. That was the intent. A quiet shuffle. Discredit the boy. Move him out of the way. But Carter didn't go quietly. So they made sure he never spoke again. I memorized the notes and replaced the folder exactly as I'd found it. When Cliff returned, I was vacuuming by the window. He barely looked at me. Just muttered, "Appreciate the late shift, Ernie," and sat down. I nodded, tight-lipped, like a good janitor. That weekend, I took a train to Quincy and met with Carter's old roommate, Miles. We hadn't spoken in over a year. He opened the door like he'd seen a ghost. "Mr. Malloy? You told me Carter had enemies," I said. "It's time you told me who." He didn't invite me in, but he stepped outside and sat on the front stoop. He wasn't paranoid, Miles said quietly. He said someone at Red Line threatened him, told him to stop asking questions, that if he kept digging, he'd regret it. Did he name anyone? Just one guy, some lawyer from Parker and Wynn. Said he looked him dead in the eye and said, "You're not smart enough to play in our world." Cliff Rowe. Had to be. Back at the office, I started phase 2. I began swapping out shredding bins before the collection trucks came. Made copies of every fragment worth piecing together. Memos, call logs, time cards. Some nights I barely slept. But it was working. The list wasn't just names anymore. It was connections. Cliff Rowe, senior partner. Valerie Stone, client liaison, flagged Carter's emails. Doug Hayes, HR director, signed a retraction memo. Russell Chin, in-house IT, deleted Carter's internal logs. All of them complicit. And I had fingerprints on all 4. Tuesday night, I left a single USB in a padded envelope. No return address. No note. Just a sticky label, BUS. 25 OSHA Archive, Carter Malloy. I slid it under the door of WHDN Channel 4, the last station that covered Carter's funeral. Then I waited. For 2 days, silence. Then Friday morning, 7:02 a.m., I turned on the TV in the supply room. The headline hit like thunder. Whistleblower evidence suggests local law firm buried safety violation that led to tragedy, my son's name. His face. On the screen. Not as a statistic, not as an overdose, but as a truth they tried to erase. I stood there, mop in hand, staring at the screen until the segment ended. Then I clocked in, just like always, because while they were scrambling, denying, calling lawyers, I had more work to do. That morning, the energy in the building shifted. They walked faster, talked quieter. Door locks beeped more. Lawyers who used to nod at me didn't even make eye contact. Security got tighter. The HR director called an emergency all-hands meeting, the kind that comes with pastries, legalese, and fake smiles. But I didn't go to meetings. I went to the basement, because that's where secrets go when they die. Most people don't know this, but the real skeletons at Parker and Wynn aren't in their boardroom. They're in Archive Room B2, the temperature-controlled storage where old cases go to collect dust. And I had a key. Not officially. But I knew where the spare was taped under the third drawer of the mail supply cabinet. Been there for years. No one ever checked. I entered at 11:43 a.m. No one saw me. No one ever did. Inside were rows of boxed files dating back to the early 2000s. I found the red line case box. Two things stood out. One, a printed memo and signed, undated, recommending removal of problematic contractor CM from project oversight. Two, a handwritten sticky note attached to a shredded email reconstruction. Client insists CM knew too much. Use medical angle if necessary. Use medical angle? That's how they did it. That's how they made Carter's death look like an overdose. I stood there staring at the page like it might catch fire from how hard I burned to destroy them. But I didn't act out. I acted smart. By Friday night, I had built something they never saw coming, a full map of the cover-up. Carter reported unsafe materials. Redline panicked. They pressured Parker and Wynn. Cliff Rowe authorized the memo to silence Carter. Someone, and I now had a damn good guess who, fabricated the overdose narrative. They buried my son and called it a personnel matter. I wasn't going to bury my evidence. I was going to hand it to the people who cared. At 2:15 p.m. the next day, I sent out 5 anonymous packages, one to WHDN Channel 4, one to the Boston Globe, one to the OSHA Regional Office, one to the Massachusetts Bar Association, and one to Cliff Rowe's wife. Each package contained copies of the notes, screenshots, Carter's photos, and the sticky with medical angle written in someone's neat, cursive hand. That handwriting? I'd seen it before. On a thank you card. From Valerie Stone, the client liaison. She had personally written my family a condolence note after Carter died. She signed it with love, though. Now her signature was on a note suggesting how to stage his death. You don't get more poetic than that. That night, I left work early. No one noticed. I took the long way home through the seaport, watched the fog roll off the water, thought about Carter at 10 years old, riding his bike down our street, yelling for me to watch him pop a wheelie. He used to say, "Dad, if I disappear, would you come find me?" I always said I wouldn't stop until I did. Now I had. I'd found the truth. And it was rotten. Monday morning, the headlines broke again. This time louder. Law firm rocked by internal scandal over worker death cover-up. Bar Association to investigate Parker and Wynn LLP. OSHA reopens case into death of contractor Carter Malloy. And then came the part that made me sit down and laugh out loud. For the first time in 2 years, partner Cliff Rowe resigns amid allegations of ethics violations. No denials. No press conference. Just gone. Pulled from the firm like a rotten tooth. I went to work that night as usual. Same uniform. Same cart. As I pushed past the front desk, the new security guy looked up and asked, "You still working here?" I smiled. For now, because I wasn't finished. Cliff fell first. But there were others. People who laughed in that break room. People who forged signatures. People who used my son as a scapegoat and expected me to clean up after them. They gave me a mop. I was going to give them a reckoning. Cliff Rowe's resignation hit the building like a pipe burst. Sudden. Messy. Loud. HR called it a personnel transition. Legal called it confidential. The staff? They whispered like rats in a sinking ship. But I didn't whisper. I listened. From behind the mop bucket. In elevators. While scrubbing conference tables. No one sees the janitor, especially when they're too busy panicking about what might come next. Tuesday afternoon, I saw Valerie Stone walking out of a closed-door meeting with Wynn himself. Pale, tight-lipped, eyes like glass. Her heels clicked too fast down the hallway, like she couldn't wait to disappear. I followed at a distance, pretending to be on trash duty. She ducked into the executive lounge, and that's when I heard it, her voice, cracking through a phone call. "No, I don't know how he got it. He has copies. Maybe from records. Maybe someone inside. I don't care, Mark. It's not supposed to exist anymore. Not supposed to exist. The memo about Carter. The photo with the cracked foundation slab. The sticky note. It all existed. Because I kept it alive. That night, I accessed the employee database through an old maintenance laptop I'd repaired for the IT team last year. They'd never changed the admin login. Big mistake. I wasn't looking for files. I was looking for patterns. I started connecting names. Who approved Carter's reassignment? Doug Hayes. Who wiped his emails? Russell Chin. Who marked the safety report unverified? Valerie Stone. Who signed the risk memo for Redline? Cliff Rowe. Who benefited financially from that land deal once the site passed inspection? Senior partner Edward Wynn. The man with the polished smile and 5 framed degrees. The one who gave Carter a posthumous "Thank you for your service" letter. The one who shook my hand at the funeral like it was nothing but bad weather. I added his name to the top of the list. Underlined. Twice. Wednesday, I pulled a stunt. I accidentally left one of the Redline photos in the printer tray on the 18th floor. Black and white Lorez, but clear enough. A crack in the concrete. A date. Carter's signature. I waited. It took 9 minutes before the whole floor was buzzing. Where did this come from? Is this real? Did someone leak this? I walked in with my cart like nothing was wrong. You okay, ma'am? I asked one of the paralegals as she clutched the page. Do you know who printed this? She whispered. I shrugged. Printer's been glitchy. Might have been left from yesterday. She nodded. Shaken. Believed me. Of course she did. Who would ever suspect the janitor? By Thursday morning, rumors turned into investigations. The Massachusetts Bar Association opened a formal ethics inquiry. WHDN aired a follow-up interview with a former Redline employee, anonymously masked, confirming that someone at the firm ordered Malloy's report buried. That interview? It was Miles, Carter's old roommate. I convinced him. I coached him. I protected him. Because this time, no one else was getting hurt. Friday morning, 5:42 a.m. I stood outside the building in the cold. The sun was just cracking over the skyline. Inside, behind those tall glass walls, they were scrambling. Cliff was gone. Valerie was panicking. Hayes had gone on personal leave. And when? He was starting to sweat. You could see it in his eyes. The way he looked over his shoulder in meetings. The way he paused mid-sentence when he saw a custodian walk by. I had him exactly where I wanted him. But I wasn't done. Because I didn't just want headlines. I wanted them legally bound. I wanted courtrooms, audits, perjury, disbarments. I wanted a trail so thick even hell couldn't cover it. And I had one more move to make. A name, a recording, a leak. All time for Monday. Because when the next wave hit, it wouldn't just wash them out. It would erase their legacy. Monday came quiet. No headlines. No subpoenas yet. No new firings. But silence can be deceiving, the kind that comes before a structure gives out. A crack you don't see until the ceiling falls in. They didn't know it yet, but today would be the day their ceiling fell. 8:05 a.m. I walked into the building wearing the same thing I always did, blue uniform, kept pulled low, thermos of black coffee in hand. But today I wasn't there to clean. I was there to bury them. I had one final file, one they didn't know existed. Because I recorded something no one thought I could, a conversation in the stairwell, for months before Carter died. I was mopping the 19th floor landings when I heard Wynn and Cliff talking. Their voices low, words chosen carefully. They didn't see me behind the service door. But I heard every word. Cliff, if he pushes this, we're exposed. Wynn, he's 25. Contractor. Replaceable. Just make sure it doesn't land on us. I recorded it. Not on a phone. On a tiny keychain recorder I always kept on me after a break-in years back. Old tech. Untraceable. I'd kept that file very deep. Until now. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and write in the comments where you're watching from. At 8:46 a.m., I uploaded the recording anonymously to the Massachusetts Bar Association, the OSHA Whistleblower Portal, WHDN Newsroom Inbox, a private investigator working the Redline civil suit, and one more. The firm's own client mailing lists the subject line, Audio Evidence, Internal Discussion Before Carter Malloy's Death. It took 12 minutes for the building to erupt. Phones started ringing. Secretaries panicked. Wynn's assistant walked into his office, then walked right back out pale, shaking, whispering into her phone. I was wiping down a nearby elevator panel when Wynn stormed past, face flushed, coat half on, tie undone. "Where the hell is it coming from?" He barked at no one in particular. Every lawyer on the floor looked terrified. Except for me. I was calm. I was ready. By 10:15 a.m., WHDN broke the story live. Breaking. Leaked audio suggests knowledge of contractor retaliation before death. Carter's name. Again. But this time, there was no spin. No overdose. No tragic young man. Just the truth that he'd tried to stop a dangerous construction fraud, and the people who were supposed to protect the public protected themselves instead. Now they had to answer for it. By noon, Cliff's lawyer gave a statement. Denials. Posturing. The usual performance. But the Bar Association was already drafting a disbarment motion. Wynn didn't give a statement. He disappeared. Rumor had it he flew to Atlanta for family reasons. But the real reason? He was running, like they always do. That night, I stayed late. No cart, no mop, just me walking the halls one last time. Valerie's office was empty, desk cleared, box on the chair. Doug Hayes' nameplate had been removed. Even the security guard gave me a look like he knew something had shifted. As I reached the 22nd floor, I stood by the glass wall and looked out over the city. Carter used to call Boston our kingdom. Said one day we'd have a business here, something small, honest. Something with our name on the window. He never got to build it. But I tore down the ones who tried to erase him. And somehow that felt right. Back home, I opened the last photo I had of him, standing in front of that worksite, hard hat on, clipboard in hand, not smiling but proud. Beneath it, I placed a single note. You were right to speak up. They'll never bury you again. Dad. They'll rebuild eventually. They always do. But this time, they'll remember that empires built on lies have cracks in every wall. And one old man with a mop can bring the whole damn thing down. By Tuesday morning, Parker and Wynn wasn't a law firm. It was a crime scene with coffee service. Clients pulled out. 2 senior attorneys filed for early retirement. And Edward Wynn, the man who once bragged he'd never lost a case, was being subpoenaed for 3. The city called it a complex legal matter, but I knew what it really was. A reckoning. I spent that afternoon meeting someone I never thought I'd speak to again, Detective Carla Hamley. She was the one assigned to Carter's case when he died. Back then, she told me, the evidence points to drugs, Mr. Malloy. I'm sorry, but now? She requested the meeting herself. I met her at a coffee shop in Roxbury. Sat by the window. Watched rain smear across the glass like spilled ink. She showed up 5 minutes late, trench coat soaked, holding a file. I listened to the recording, she said. The one you leaked. I didn't say anything. She slid a document across the table. It was a request to reopen Carter's case. Official. Signed. We never had motive back then. Just a body and some assumptions. Now we have motive, method, witnesses, and intent. Still, I didn't say anything. She leaned in. Did you keep all the files? I looked her dead in the eye. I kept everything. That night, I walked down to the storage shed behind my house. It used to be filled with tools, bikes, junk from decades past. Now, it was organized. Bins labeled. Boxes of printed emails. Copies of shredding. Hard drives. Photos. Timelines. I'd been building this like a carpenter builds a coffin. Slow, silent, precise. I handed her everything. She asked if I wanted to be part of the case when it went public. Testify. Speak at the hearing. Be on the record. I shook my head. No. Let the evidence speak. Let them sweat wondering who did this. She smiled. You sure you're just a janitor? I gave her a look. I clean messes. Yours was overdue. By Friday, the world changed again. Carter's name was cleared. The state board acknowledged that his original safety report had been intentionally suppressed by third-party legal representatives, namely Parker and Wynn. WHDN ran a special segment titled, "The Janitor Who Brought Down a Giant." They didn't name me. Didn't need to. Anyone paying attention already knew. Valerie Stone resigned without a word. Doug Hayes was placed on administrative leave pending review. Russell Chin was cooperating with investigators. Cliff Rowe was hiding behind attorneys. And Edward Wynne? He was being indicted for conspiracy, ethics violations, and reckless endangerment tied to construction fraud and Carter's death. And me? I left the firm, turned in my badge, left the cart in the maintenance bay, walked out of that building for the last time with my head high and my back straight. No one stopped me. A few nodded. One young attorney said, "Thank you, sir." I didn't reply. I didn't need to. That weekend, I sat on my porch with a cup of black coffee and the only photo that mattered, Carter, 8 years old, holding a Lego city he built all by himself. He used to say, "If it falls, I'll rebuild it better." They tried to bury him, but I rebuilt his name. Better, stronger, with proof, with silence, with patience sharpened into steel. And now that the dust had settled, there was only one thing left to do. It's strange how quiet justice can be. No fireworks, no applause, just the sound of papers moving, doors closing, chairs being pushed back as men who once ruled boardrooms pack up their lies and walk into courtrooms. That Monday morning, I watched it all from a bench outside the courthouse. Cloudy sky, coffee in hand, same coat, same boots. Across the street, the cameras rolled. Edward Wynne arrives for arraignment in Malloy case. Public outrage grows after evidence leak. They called it the Malloy case now. Not Red Line, not OSHA. Malloy, my son's name. Finally, in a place where people had to look it in the face. I didn't go inside. Didn't need to. I'd seen enough wood-paneled chambers in my life to know how they work. A man like Wynne would deny, delay, settle. But it wouldn't save him. The evidence wasn't just heavy, it was radioactive. Audio recordings, shredded reconstructions, testimony, conflicts of interest, money trails. His world didn't fall overnight. It fell inch by inch, and I carved out every inch myself. 2 weeks later, I got a letter. Typed. No return address. It said, "I don't know how you did it, but I know why. I made choices I'll regret for the rest of my life. Not because I was caught, but because your son deserved better. We all did. V. Valerie. I didn't forgive her, but I kept the letter. Even monsters leave behind something human when they break. I spent my last day in Boston walking the same route Carter used to take to work. Through the Commons. Past the sandwich shop he liked. Down the alley where he skated as a kid. I stopped by the site where Red Line had poured the bad concrete. Now it was just rebar and mud again. Project canceled, permits pulled, lawsuit pending. The land was empty, like it was waiting for something better, something honest. I didn't tell anyone I was leaving town. Just packed a few bags and caught a train south. Rented a cabin near a Lake Evelyn, and I used to visit. Quiet, wood-burning stove. No phone. It wasn't peace. But it was a place where I could finally sit without listening for footsteps behind me. Sometimes I still hear his voice. Carter. Not in some ghostly way. Just memory. You were always stubborn, Dad. Damn right, I say out loud. Then I go back to reading. Or chopping wood. Or listening to the wind. Because I didn't get revenge by shouting. I got it by remembering. By digging. By refusing to let go when they told me it was time. And in the end, I didn't break the law. I just used the tools they gave me and the one thing they didn't count on. A father's memory. If you ever pass through Boston and hear someone say a janitor brought down a law firm, you might think it's a myth. A rumor. An exaggeration. But it's real. I was the janitor. And I didn't need a title to matter. I just needed the truth. And once I had it, I made damn sure they'd never forget the name Carter Malloy again.